Welcome back to the AI in Business Academy. I'm James Anderson. In the last lesson we talked about bias in AI systems, how it creeps in, why it matters and what you can do about it. If you've not seen that one yet, go back and have a look because this series builds on itself. Today we're tackling something that every business owner has considered at some point: chatbots. A little chat window in the bottom corner of your website that says, "Hi, how can I help you?" Most business owners either dismiss chatbots as useless gimmicks or they think they are some kind of magic solution that will replace their entire customer service team. The truth is somewhere in the middle, and the difference between a chatbot that makes you money and one that annoys your customers comes down to an understanding what they actually are and whether your business is genuinely ready for one. And don't get me wrong, chatbots have evolved from what they were sort of 4 or 5 years ago. I mean, you go on insurance sites, you go on various subscription sites, and they used to be painful. You type it in, there was no context, there was no learning, they didn't know anything about you. It was very, very frustrating, probably more frustrating than actually waiting on the phone call. So hence I always used to just call them. But now, obviously with the integration of AI, with the abilities, these are starting to improve dramatically and become more effective. And also the idea is basically that they can reduce your staff's time working on things and you can automate as much as possible with chatbots. So by the end of the lesson, you will understand what a chatbot is, whether your business needs one, what it actually costs compared to hiring someone, and the mistakes that cause most implementations to fail. So let me break this down in plain English. Let me start with the basics. A chatbot is a bit of software that simulates a conversation with a human. It takes a message from a customer, processes it, and generates a response. Input, process, output. Same structure as we covered in the algorithm lesson. Now here is the important distinction. There are two types of chatbot and they work very differently. The first type is a rules-based chatbot, and this follows pre-written scripts and decision trees. If the customer says X, respond with Y. It cannot handle anything outside its script, and these have been around since the 1960s. Like I previously said. The first one was called Eliza and it was built by MIT. It mimicked a therapist by rephrasing whatever you said as a question. Sounds quite annoying. People genuinely thought that they were talking to a real person. It was a parlor trick, but it proved that humans will engage with a machine if the conversation feels natural enough. The second type, as I mentioned, is an AI-powered chatbot. This uses a language model to understand what the customer is asking and generate a response. It can handle questions it's never seen before within limits. It learns from the data it was trained on, and this is what most modern chatbot platforms offer. The key thing to understand is that even AI-powered chatbots are not intelligent, which is a bit of an oxymoron because they're called artificial intelligence. But anyway, they are actually just pattern matching machines. They are very good at handling repetitive, predictable queries. They are very, very bad at anything that requires judgment, empathy, or creative problem solving, unless it's very, very well defined. And knowing where the line sits is the difference between a chatbot that helps your business and one that drives your customers absolutely mental. So before you spend any money on a chatbot, first answer these 5 questions. Do you have repetitive questions that your team answers constantly? Look at your emails, your phone calls, your DMs. If you write down 20 or more questions that your team answers every week, this is a strong signal. Second, what is your support volume and are you keeping up? Chatbots make sense when response delays are frustrating customers. The question is not whether you are getting a lot of inquiries, the question is whether you are struggling to respond fast enough. Third, do you have documented processes? Chatbots need clear, repeatable workflows. If your team handles the same task differently depending on who is doing it, you are absolutely not ready, so fix that first. Fourth, is your team bought in? If your team sees it as a threat or extra work, it will fail. Someone on your team needs to actually want this, and you need to identify them as the leader for implementation. I've been there before. I've introduced hundreds of different softwares and processes and ideas into the business, and it absolutely fundamentally doesn't work unless you can get your staff's buy-in. So what I would suggest with a chatbot is find the person who's doing the most of this work, and then, as I mentioned, nominate them with the task, because hopefully they'll see the benefit from it and they'll engage it, and then you can hand it off to the rest of the team once it's been fully implemented. Do you have a realistic expectation and budget? Chatbots aren't free. You need to budget for setup, maintenance and ongoing updates, and you need to understand that a chatbot will handle maybe 70 to 80% of routine queries. The other 20% still needs a human. And if you're expecting to replace your team entirely, you are going to be disappointed. Based on the 5 questions before, 3 or more yes answers, and you're ready to explore. But if you've answered mostly no, you need to go back and fix the fundamentals first and save your money. If you need help fixing the fundamentals, that's exactly what we do as a business. We do AI audits where we can come in, we can speak to you, we can speak to your team, we can identify the low-hanging fruit, the repetitive processes, we can even work through and define the processes clear, and then we can find the tool that fits in with the process, implement it, maintain it and monitor it. And then we can also map the ROI to see how beneficial it is in your business. The AI landscape is changing rapidly. Literally every single week there's a new tool, there's a new way of doing things. Okay, let us talk numbers, because this is what actually matters. A basic chatbot for a small business costs between 40 and 80 pounds per month. For around 50 pounds you can get FAQ automation, basic CRM integration and analytics. But there is sometimes a one-time setup fee of 100 to 500 pounds. And here is the hidden cost most people miss. Someone on your team needs to maintain it, updating FAQs, reviewing conversations, making improvements. Budget at least a few hours a month for that. Now compare that to a part-time customer service hire. 20 hours per week at £14 per hour gives you a gross pay of around £1,000 a month. But if you pay employer national insurance, pension contributions and holidays, as we all know, this ramps up considerably, especially in the UK at the moment. And the actual cost can land into around £1,200 to £1,400 per month all in. And that excludes all the other stuff like the recruitment cost, the training time and the software you need. So some of the chatbots we've worked with can roughly cost anywhere between 50 and say £250, £300 a month, depending on which one you go for and how much volume you need. A part-time hire costs roughly £1,000 to £1,300 as we discussed. The chatbot can be anything from 5% up to around 10-20% of the cost, and it can handle 1,000 queries a day without getting tired. A human doing 20 hours a week handles maybe 40 to 80 inquiries per week, and the quality for the most part will be more consistent. The break-even point is usually around 50 to 100 repetitive queries per month. If you're above that, a chatbot will save you money, but the crucial bit is this: the best approach is hybrid. The chatbot handles the routine volume, your team handles 20% that actually need a human touch, maybe a phone call, maybe a face-to-face, whatever that might be. You're not replacing people, you're freeing them up to do the work that only people can do. If you've got lots of inquiries and it's lots of the common things, I know if I go to some good websites now and they've got good chatbots integrated, basically if I can find out what I want online, I'm super happy. Like, I don't want to speak to people all the time. I think in the modern era, people are not that comfortable speaking to people on the phone all the time, and they just want their answer as soon as possible. So if you've got a really well set up chatbot which answers 80% of the inquiries how they want without somebody having to speak to them, it's great for you because it saves cost, and it's great for your customer because they can get their answer quickly, reliably and efficiently without having to phone up or waste loads of time. So let me give you some real examples so you can see both sides. Are you an Italian eyeglass retailer switched from basic Shopify chat to Tedio with AI flows? The results were significant. They generated €177,000 in additional revenue for the first year. Not bad. Response times dropped from 2 to 5 minutes down to 30 seconds. 82% of inquiries were resolved automatically. The chatbot handled routine product questions and cart recovery, freeing the team for complex issues. That is a chatbot doing exactly what it should. Stadtwerke Düren, an energy company in Germany, implemented a chatbot that handles 55% of all customer inquiries automatically. It cut costs and boosted customer satisfaction. More than half of routine queries are now handled without a human touching them. Now the failures, and these are patterns, not one-off disasters. The most common failure is poor training data and rigid responses. The business does not feed the chatbot good content, so it gives robotic, unhelpful, irrelevant answers. Customers feel like they're talking to a wall. The second failure is no human handoff. The chatbot cannot recognize its own limits, and the customer will get stuck in a loop, repeating themselves, getting angrier and angrier each time. And the third issue is misalignment. The business builds a chatbot that answers questions nobody's asking, while ignoring the ones that are actually flooding the inbox. And here is the moment it all falls apart. Imagine a customer messages saying, "I ordered a gift for my daughter's birthday and it arrived 2 days late. She was devastated. I need to speak to someone now." And the chatbot responds, "I understand you are upset. Would you like information about our returns policy?" This is the wrong response. The customer needs empathy and solution, not a link to a policy document. And that is the exact moment your chatbot must recognize it's hit its limit and hand off to a human in your team, passing the full conversation context so the customer does not have to repeat themselves. Now let me talk about something most business owners completely forget. What happens to the customer data in the chatbot conversation? When a customer messages your chatbot, they are sharing personal information, names, emails, phone numbers, maybe addresses, maybe payment details. Under UK's strict GDPR rules, you are responsible for how the data is handled. If you watched our news roundup this week, you saw what happened to Sears. Their AI chatbot exposed 3.7 million customer records because their databases were unsecured. That is the worst case scenario, and it's not hypothetical. You need to ask your chatbot provider these questions. 1. Where's the data stored? Who has access to conversation logs? Are they encrypted? How long are they kept? Does the provider use your customer conversations to train their AI models? Because if they do, that is a GDPR concern and you need explicit consent. The key point is this: if a customer shares personal information with your chatbot, you are responsible for that data, not the chatbot provider. You. Make sure your privacy notice covers chatbot conversations and make sure you have a data processing agreement with your provider. The single most important thing in any chatbot implementation is the handoff to a human. Get this wrong and you've created a worse customer experience than having no chatbot at all. Your chatbot needs to recognize specific signals that it has reached its limit. The customer explicitly asked for a human is a great example. They used words like frustrated, angry, or useless, emotional type of terminology, and the conversation has gone past a certain number of terms without resolution, or the question falls outside the chatbot's knowledge. When any of those signals trigger, the chatbot should do 3 things. First, acknowledge it cannot help further. Something like, "I think this is better handled by our team. Let me connect to you." Second, summarize what the customer has already shared so they don't have to repeat themselves. Nothing more frustrating than that. And third, pass the full context to the human agent before the handoff happens. This is what integration actually means. Your chatbot needs to connect to your help desk so the human can see the full conversation history. Without it, you're creating more problems than you're solving. In our work with businesses, we start with multiple human checkpoints in any automated process, 5 or 6 review points internally. As confidence builds, you remove the checks one by one until you've got it down to a steer and a final review. And that is the safe way to deploy this. So let me leave you with 3 things to take away from this lesson. First, the definition. A chatbot is a software that simulates conversation. It comes in 2 types: rules-based, which follows scripts, and AI-powered, which uses language models to understand and respond. Neither type is intelligent. They are pattern matching tools that handle repetitive queries well and complex ones badly. Second, the economics. A chatbot can cost between 5 to 15% of what a part-time hire costs and can handle dramatically more volume. But the real value is in the hybrid model. Chatbot handles the routine 80%, your team handles the 20% that needs a human. You are not replacing people, you are redeploying them on higher value work. Third, the make or break factor. The handoff to a human determines whether your chatbot helps or harms your business. If a customer gets stuck in a loop with no way out, you have damaged the relationship. Program the escalation triggers, pass the conversation context, and never make the customer repeat themselves. So to distill this lesson down to one line, a chatbot is not magic. It's not a gimmick, it's a tool that saves you time and money on repetitive queries, but only if you have the right content, the right handoff, and realistic expectations. In the next lesson, we'll be moving on to D. We will be talking about data, what it is, how AI uses it, and what business owners need to understand about the data in their business generated every day. That one is crucial because data is the fuel that makes everything else in AI work. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below the line, and I'll see you in the next lesson.